In 1962, Robert A. Heinlein wrote this book, Farnham's Freehold. And I've read most of Heinlein, but I'd never even heard of this book. Whether it was deliberately or subconsciously censored and repressed in the United Kingdom when I was growing up, I don't know. When I mentioned I was going to do this, a few people, a few people mentioned that they really liked it or they really hated it. And having read it, I can see why there's such a variation of opinion. Much like myself, it didn't leave people neutral. It is billed as science fiction's most controversial novel, and it is definitely that. The first half of the book is the build-up to a sudden nuclear strike on the United States of America by the Soviets, and consequential survival in a bunker that the main character Hugh has built with his family. And then they time travel into America 2,000 years hence. So why is this controversial? Well, issues of race are throughout the entire book, and I think race and the nihilism of a nuclear exchange is what the book's actually about. To prove that Western civilization cannot survive a nuclear strike, the proposition of the book is that, I'm not going to give too many spoilers, the proposition of the book is in the future there is a chosen race that's evolved 2,000 years later, which is mostly black African with a little bit of Middle Eastern, and a version of the Quran which is corrupted. And they actually own the world. Their civilization is stagnant. They have one language. They believe that language has always been the language. They have a social system which is remarkably similar but different from the current one. They have capitalism, but it's a little different from law. It's more God's law in a way. Anyway, I marked off a few parts of the book from a prepping point of view. So I do these from a prepping point of view, with a little bit of literature in it. They talk about every car in the family has a survival kit, and if you recall some of the other discussions we've been having recently, that's a big thing for survivalism. Back in 1945, Heinlein was advocating this, so it's no surprise by 1962 he's still doing so. Oh, and what is in the car? 10 gallons of water, food, a Jeep can of gasoline, medicines, a sleeping bag, a gun, a shovel, an axe, clothes, a radio. He has built a bomb shelter. His family calls it Farnham's Folly. One of the downsides for the book for me was just how rubbish his family is. His wife's an alcoholic, a fat lazy alcoholic who's completely stupid and selfish. His son is supposed to be a lawyer, but acts like he's a 12-year-old throughout most of the book. But you know what, it makes Hugh and the other two females in the bunker, and in a way at the beginning, the servant Joe, who is black, it makes them more strong, but it's mistakenly done. Nobody expects people to attack. Again, we get back to insurance, which Heinlein mentioned in 1945. I never had an automobile accident, but I carry automobile insurance. This shelter is my life insurance policy. That's a recurring theme, even in 2018 with preppers. Prepping is insurance. It's also a fascinating hobby. Now we're getting a bit of eugenics, because eugenics is not specific in this book before the travel, but it's actually forewarned early on. This may be the first war in history which kills the stupid rather than the bright and the able, where it makes that distinction. How do you figure that, Hugh? Well, wars have always been hardest on the best young men. This time the boys in service are safe, or safer than civilians. Well, that actually wasn't true. And of civilians, those who used their heads and made preparation stand a far better chance. That's true. Not every case, but on average. And again, that goes back to my theory of luck in prepping and surviving. And luck is throughout most prepper fiction. Not in every case, but on average, and that will improve the breed. When it's over, things will be tough, and that will improve the breed still more. For years, the surest way of surviving has been to be utterly worthless and breed a lot of worthless kids. That will all change. She nodded thoughtfully. That's standard genetics, but it seems cruel. Yeah, it seems cruel. Proving the breed by killing vast numbers of the breed, so the ones who survive are genetically strong and mentally strong. Sounds cruel. It's what's been going on for a long time. There is a joke. The jokes in this book are not very frequent for Heinlein, not very good for Heinlein. It could be an example. And I'm getting sick of it, said Karen. I haven't heard that one before. It's not very good, but I might use it. Later on, he felt sudden grief that the abstract knowledge of deaths of millions had not given him. Somehow the burning of millions of books felt more brutally obscene than the killing of people. All men must die. It was their single common heritage. But a book need never die and should not be killed. Books were the immortal part of man. Then he talks about the books that he's put in his shelter, and these are kind of interesting. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Che Guevara's War of the Guerrillas, the Encyclopedia Britannica, Mao Zedong's on guerrilla warfare, Tom Whittingham's New Ways of War, which has previously been mentioned. I'm going to have to make some efforts to find it. The Boy Scout Handbook, Uncle Al. SPAC's Mechanical Engineering, The Radio Repairer's Guide, Outdoor Life Hunting and Fishing, Edible Fungi and How to Know Them, Home Life in the Colonial Days, Your Log Cabin, Chimneys and Fireplaces, The Hobo's Cookbook, Medicine Without a Doctor, 5 Acres and Independence, Russian Self-Taught, and English-Russian and Russian-English dictionaries, bearing in mind he intends to survive the nuclear war and then he intends to fight the invaders who will be Russian. The Complete Herbalist, the survival manuals of the Navy Bureau of Weapons, and the Air Force's survival techniques, and the Practical Carpenter. The Oxford Book of English Verse, the Treasure of American Poetry. I've read some American poetry. I don't think it's a crucial thing if it gets lost. Sorry Americans, but it's like Canadian poetry. Hoyle's Book of Games, Burns' Anatomy of Melancholy, Burns' Thousand Nights and a Night, The Odyssey, Kipling's Verses, It's Just So Stories, a 1-volume Shakespeare. Is that it? The Book of Common Prayer, the Bible, Mathematical Recreations and Essays, Thus Spake Zarathustra. T.S. Eliot, The Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats, the guy likes cats. Robert Frost's Verse, Men Against the Sea. And there's other books he wished he had, blah blah blah. So yeah, so that raises the question, what books would you actually put into your fallout shelter? I'm not sure. The one thing that he does not put in the fallout shelter that he thinks is a huge error later on, when they survive, is a wheelbarrow. And I completely agree with that. We have one, I'm going to get another one, and some carts for the Shire property. Being able to move things mechanically using wheels and levers sure is a good thing to do. Having established themselves in a different planet, they realise it's the same planet, and eventually they actually realise it's actually where they set off from, but it is not anything like where they were, so they think maybe it's a different dimensional world. I'm not sure where they are. The third atomic blast moves them through time, but they don't know that initially. Hugh actually does sundry religious services, and I think this is kind of an interesting idea. But Hugh's godless offering to God had become important, and I think that's critical. He actually defends this later on by saying that members of the party believe in God, though he does not, and to give them the stability of faith is critical. And I fully agree with that. Now this I also very much agree with. Sundays are important in other ways too. Hugh discourages work other than barbering, primping, or hobby work, and encourages games or any fun thing. Chess, bridge, Scrabble, modelling in clay, group sing, such like, or just yakking. Games are important. They mark that we're not just animals trying to stay alive, but humans enjoying life and saving it. The nightly rubber of bridge we never skip. Bridge is a critical plot in this. It proclaims that our lives are not just simply hoeing and digging ditches and butchering. And a lot of prepper attention on survival is survival the immediate fall of society from whatever cause. Where recreation has a place in most prepper videos online and most prepper books is entertaining children, because children might otherwise get bored. But as I've said before, and I'll say again, childhood ends as soon as the child can carry a pint of water. In SHTF, everybody works for hours, including children. The idea that children are somehow able to have no input into the survival and they have to just be entertained is very much a 21st century attitude, and it won't work in a societal fall. I'm not talking about a temporary flood, I'm talking about massive nuclear attack, asteroid strike, massive plague. Children will have to be adults as soon as they can walk, and that's kind of sad, but it's the way it is. The other thing they find out is that they did not plan for orphaned babies. They did not have any formula, and the amount of milk they had, which would not work anyway, condensed milk will not work for neonates. So the baby survives the mother, who dies. I'm not going to tell you who or why, but the baby then dies as well, which is kind of sad. So I'm getting a bit rambly, so this will be part 1. Part 2 will be tomorrow, and it will cover the last half of the book. Stay tuned. Au revoir.